Thank you. Thank you. This meeting is called to order. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the City of Boynton Beach workshop meeting. Today is Wednesday, May 18th, 2022, and the time is now 5:36 p.m. As always, we'll begin with an invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Turkin, and we'll proceed from there. Let's all stand for the invocation, followed by the pledge.
Let us pray. Father, we thank you for another wonderful day in South Florida and especially in Boynton Beach. And as we gather today, we ask that you be in the midst of this discussion and this workshop. We pray, Father, and we thank you for the funds that were given to the great city of Boynton Beach from the American Rescue Plan Act. And we pray, Father, that these funds will be distributed accordingly, that it will be a benefit to those who are in recipients of these funds. We pray that all our citizens will be considered those who have submitted their application, and that we as the leaders of this great city will make the proper decision that will be for the benefit of all. Bless this council, bless staff, and bless everyone that is in the audience. We'll be so careful to give you all the honor and all the praise. In your Savior's name we pray. Let every heart say amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everybody. Ms. Gibson, if you could begin the roll call, please.
Mayor Typen Serga,
Here.
Vice Mayor Angela Cruz,
Present.
Commissioner Woodrow Hay,
Here.
Commissioner Thomas Turkin,
Here.
Commissioner Amy Kelly.
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda approval, deletions or corrections to the agenda. I would like to request from my colleagues if we could allow a public comment section so anybody in the audience can at least introduce themselves and the organizations from which they represent. Would that be all right?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah,
Let's do that before the presentations.
okay.
And so we'll have introductions, then we'll entertain the presentations from staff. So we'll add that right before B. Anything else from anybody? All right, seeing none, we have a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So move.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously. The agenda is amended. So at this time, it is now public comment. And again, this is a workshop meeting to discuss the American Rescue Plan Act. This is an informational or educational meeting to ensure that all members of the commission are fully up to speed with what the ARP law entails, what are allowable uses, and what our options are before us. So if anybody in the audience would like to speak, you can approach the podium, and like at any other meeting, you have 3 minutes.
My first opportunity to congratulate everyone since you've been installed. My name is Sherry Johnson, and I work for the Boynton Beach Faith-Based BDC. I'm the coordinator for the Heart of Boynton Alliance of social service providers and agencies. That alliance consists of 11 nonprofit organizations. We're here, I would introduce you to them. And the coalition, Boynton Clergy Coalition, which has an 18-member congregation in the heart of Boynton. We felt that the heart of Boynton was probably hit the hardest with discrepancies, disparities, and inequity. And if I had been just a little bolder, but I was held back and trying to be conservative, I would have asked for every single dollar that you had on your budget. I believe in this community. I've researched all the organizations. The leadership is phenomenal. And we're here to all work together. This is an unusual process. And so when I understand the issue of this ARPA money for funding, It is really to look at those communities that have been hit the hardest and come up with unique ways of addressing some of the pillars, those 5 pillars. So we've applied in all 5 pillars for consideration. We are extremely experienced and capable. We're able to match a dollar for dollar. When your funding goes into our neighborhood, it is recirculated at least 3 times. So if you were to give us $1 million, you would actually get an economic impact of not only what we match $1 million, that would be 2, and it would circulate 3 times. So your $1 million to this neighborhood would actually be a $6 million impact to the community. If I hit my 3 mark, I can still go. All right, so I believe the county has been approaching ways of unique relationships and promoting partners. James Green from the county came down and did a presentation to the commission earlier this year and recommended in his Secure Our Future Economic Mobility that the city begin organizing partnerships. We were already doing that 2 years ahead of time. That was
Keep
it?
going. No, no, no. keep
Oh,
going.
we were already doing that 2 years ahead of time. We streamlined the process. It is a one-stop shop where we have an online client-based data. So these clients do not have to go to 6 different organizations to get all the help that they need. It is a one-stop shop. That was it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. If anybody else in the audience would like to speak, now is the time to do that. We have 2 podiums.
Hi, my name is Mary Pressman. I'm the Chief Program Officer for Fancier. And this is Nancy Obo. She's the site supervisor for the Boynton Beach office. So we are, Fancier have been in the community for 37 years. We started as the comprehensive AIDS program where we were only serving people with HIV. So we have grown. We operate 7 sites. 5 of them are health centers. 2 of them are only servicing people with HIV, offering medical case management and behavioral health services. So the funding that we are seeking is to expand her site, which is Boynton Beach, to provide medical services at that site. Currently, the site only offers case management and support services, HIV testing, Hep C testing, behavioral health services, but not medical services. So we want to expand that, offer medical services at that site, make it a medical home for low-income individuals in Boynton Beach. We have signed in 7 years with the landlord. So we already have the plan. It's going to take like two months to build out the plan. So we already have the sites. We're going to modify the area so we can serve. We have, I think, 4 exam rooms and to serve, I think, 1,500 individuals in this area. So one of the pillars that we applied for is the healthcare access and the healthcare outcome. Also in reference with the COVID-19, Fancier was one of the first agency in Florida to provide COVID-19 assistance to our residents. So in being able to be awarded these funds, we will continue to provide the services references to COVID-19 and continue to serve the population that we already serve, especially that we notice that Boynton Beach does not have 82% of residents in Boynton Beach does not have a medical home. By us being granted that, we will be able to offer that to our residents. That's it for Fancier.
All right, thank you so much. Please begin when you're ready.
I want to be tall today. Hi guys. I don't have a lovely presentation like Sherry does. I want to say thank you guys for having this meeting and having us in the know of what we're doing and how we're proceeding. Everybody in the audience is doing great work and amazing stuff. Stop talking to them. I'm not supposed to talk to you guys. Okay. Everybody in the
I just
audience.
want to remind you to introduce yourself
Oh,
for the record.
hi guys. I'm Sheila Gaines, 2500 Quantum Lakes Drive. Running on fumes today, I apologize. The plan that we presented will bring so many jobs to the city of Boynton. And we are a full service city, right? I said that right? Got it for you. And we are looking to, so we're already doing the work. We're looking to expand the work and, like Sherry said, let our dollars circulate within Boynton Beach. We've proven that we can do the work. We've proven that we are community driven, people driven. And I just to say, hope you guys make the right decision so that it can get to the community, because the community really needs it. If you look at our numbers for mental health, healthcare access, we've included companies like Boynton Strong that's going to work with the police officers to be able to mend that relationship and see how we can start something as far as like community policing or street warriors or whatever it may be titled at that time. We're working with the CDC. Like, this alliance is very amazing. If anybody wants to see the structure of it, we've created a different structure to it, and Chuck is coming to help me out because for the first time, I'm a little flustered. I'm running on fumes today. But thank you guys. Please make the right decision on how we are going to disperse these funds. I know that Boynton Beach is an amazing place to live, work, and play. I keep stealing that from Riviera Beach, but I really do feel like that. Thank you.
Mayor, Commission. My name is Chuck Ridley, and tonight I wear the hat of the political consultant for SEIU. I also, though, have worked very closely with this alliance, and I walked in on the word amazing. I can't tell you anything other than short of that being amazing. Let's just talk a little bit about how and why this particular coalition came together. You guys have been here long enough to know I don't have to tell you the history of the city of Boynton and the work that you've done. Much of this predates the most recent issue that you have with young Mr. Stanley Davis. However, you were doing some work around equity, some really good work with FIU. At the same time, the ARP dollars were beginning to filter from the Biden administration through the state of Florida down to the municipalities. And I think most of you are aware that the intent of those dollars was to begin to create a new way of investing in communities, particularly communities that were hit hard by COVID, but those underlying structures that caused particular neighborhoods to be hit hard predated the COVID virus. In fact, we used to call it structural racism before COVID. It had the same impact. And the idea would be to invest those dollars from the municipality or the local governmental agencies in a very different way. Community itself decided, well, let's do the same thing. Why not? Let's look at how let's not wait for a grant. Let's look for a different way, a different model that one could build off of the work that was already happening in the equity initiatives, build off the work that was already happening in community, and come together in such a way that we can bring resources to the table based on knowledge and expertise and resources that we already have, and combine that so that the city can look at what would it look like to have a very different model. And that's what got presented to you. A model that, for some it may have a sticker shock, but if you look deep enough down and what that model is, it is actually the community itself looking at a different structure to invest in you as you invest in them. I can see by the clock my time is worn out. And if you have any other questions, the three of us will be here to answer any of those.
Thank you. Next speaker, please approach the podium and begin when you're ready.
Thank you, and thank you, Mayor and Commissions, for your time today. My name is Jennifer Ray. I am the Chief Program Officer with Aid to Victims of Domestic Abuse. We are located confidentially in the southern part of Palm Beach County, very closely to the city of Boynton Beach. Our program that we proposed through the Arpa funding, Keeping City of Boynton Beach Residents Safe from Domestic Violence, is to provide outreach services to survivors of domestic violence, as well as facilitate violence prevention programming in your community in order to ensure folks are not experiencing the impact of domestic violence. Domestic violence, we know that is inclusive of physical, sexual, emotional, psychological abuse, but it also includes financial abuse. 99% of survivors of domestic violence were financially or are financially abused by an intimate partner. When you take that in addition to the impact financially on families through COVID, it is trapping victims of domestic violence in their homes with abusive partners. We also found that because of COVID, we had survivors living in their homes with their abusive partners, unable to even reach out for help because hotlines were traditionally phone calls. Through COVID, we text-enabled our 24-hour hotline to make it easier for survivors to discreetly, while in their homes with their abusers, reach out for direct services. Domestic violence disproportionately affects Hispanic and Black women in our communities, and we are dedicated to making sure that there are access to services immediately for victims of domestic violence living in the city of Boynton Beach. Our programs, in addition to the immediate safety services and access to legal advocacy to get an injunction for protection, the ability to navigate survivors into emergency shelters away from their abusive partners, we also have an economic justice project where we are assisting survivors in overcoming the financial impact of being abused and through that manner. So our programs are running with access to supporting them in getting back to their employment with resume writing, job skills, mock interviewing. We also have the ability to help them repair their credit and build credit, manage their financial assets, access financial resources so that they can live independently from an abusive partner, safe with their children. So we appreciate your time and consideration of our application to help the citizens of the city of Boynton Beach deal with not only the economic impact of COVID, but how that has compounded more problems and challenges for victims of domestic violence in your city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hi. My name is Victoria Moroso, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Victory Program. I introduced myself to you guys briefly last meeting, and I'm just going to kind of go over it again. I help returning citizens, which means people that have been to prison. I'm out in the field every single day. I pick up my phone 24 hours. They know they can call me 7 days a week, and I'm going to answer. It makes a difference when somebody has been to prison before and their life is a walking testimony. On Thursday, I graduated from Palm Beach State College with a criminal justice degree, and I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to continue to keep going. So I've learned this in my experience. I've partnered up with Goodwill. I get all my referrals from either the Goodwill, the Lord's Place, or Reentry, or GEO if they're at a private prison. But I work with South Bay, where all returning citizens to Palm Beach County will EOS from South Bay and Sago Palm. Both those two prisons I work with, I go speak at the reentry seminars. I get multiple clients that call me. My data, I don't have a data system right now. What I'm doing is I do Microsoft Excel and I write down everything. Like I'm literally starting, you could say the Lord's Place or the Goodwill from the bottom up. And this funding would really help me because I use my own personal dollars to try to make a difference in the community. I don't have a lot of time to apply for grants because I was a college student. I am a single mother, and I also have another job, so I can provide money for this. So this grant was presented to me from the city of Boynton. I went to an event you had. I also offer community service through the Palm Beach County Courthouse and Department of Corrections. I've sent pictures to you guys. I do cleanups at the Sims Park. And I'm just really active in the community, and I would like to take into consideration the Victory Program for this funding. And if I ever have an opportunity to meet with any of you, I would love to meet with you guys and tell you more. You can meet my clients. I have clients that they came home from prison, did 15 years, and now they're enrolled in college. I have connections due to me being a student. I help them there. I place them at Manpower or Dunkin' Donuts. I'm friends with the somebody high at Dunkin' Donuts, and I get them all a job. So when they come to me, I'm like, Larry, let's figure out what we can do. And I think that my life as a testimony has that effect on them because they say, wow, she can do it, then I can do it too. And then now look at me speaking in front of you guys nervous, but I know that I got to be the change that I wish to see. And I just hope for that opportunity. God bless.
Thank you, and congratulations on your recent graduation. I'm sorry, I have to give everybody an opportunity first. And actually, we only allow 3 minutes per person per meeting. So if there's anybody else in the room who would like to come up and speak at this time, now is the opportunity. Seeing none, I'm going to move on to online speakers. Mr. McNally, is there anybody online with their hands up?
Mayor Pensurga, there are 2 speakers that have their hand raised and 1 individual who has typed a question. So I'll go with Annette Gray, who is, I'm going to unmute your microphone.
And before any of the virtual speakers begin, I just want to let you know, I will let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining so you can pace yourself. Begin when you are ready.
Good evening. My name is Annette Gray. I am the founder of GBDC Center for Entrepreneurship, Workforce Development, and STEAM, 1500 Gateway Boulevard, Boynton Beach. I certainly don't envy the decision that you have to make as I sit and listen to the presentation of all the other organizations. Everybody is doing phenomenal and much needed work in the community. I'll tell you a little bit about our program, but the process also requires organizations who have experience in managing and reporting federal grants, because at the end of the day, you are responsible for those grants. And it's also important that you select organizations who have this kind of experience. So not only just to spend the funds, but to be held accountable along with yourself for the funds to be spent according to the guidelines. So when the process was put forward, the concept of who's been doing this, who's qualified to do the work, not necessarily the quality of the work, because everybody's doing good work. I've been in and around Boynton Beach for the past 20 years. I've been working with our community. As I said before, our youth, we had the school board representative come and talk about the impact of COVID on the learning slide, domestic abuse, and criminal justice components. And so our program was recommended to do a wraparound service. We want to change the socioeconomic standard of our youth, how much they can earn, and change the cycle of poverty. Hence the reason for the wraparound service. You may get a job, but if you have mental challenges or criminal history or environment that is steeped in criminal activity, it's difficult for you to keep that job. And that is why our program is experiential in nature. A significant amount of our monies that we requested go back into the pocket of the students, because if they cannot make money, they will have to get a job and they will have to leave the program. And we don't want that. So we have a lot of very creative, as Shelley said, unique ways to approach learning, because as the school board says, this cannot all be done in the classroom. I appreciate you. I appreciate this ability for you to sit and have this discussion. And I'm sure whatever you decide will be for the better of the citizens of the city. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. McNally, please unmute the second speaker.
Okay, that is Jacoby Waters.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Jacoby Waters, the founder and executive director of Young Men of Distinction. So Young Men of Distinction, just a little bit about us. We mentor young men ages 7 through 18, and our motto is helping to create generational wealth and empowerment. And I'd like to thank you guys for this opportunity to allow us to present ourselves to you before you make your decision. We have this discussion. So with Young Men of Distinction, we have been around for 3 years now. We've worked throughout the Palm Beach County area. And, with these particular dollars, it was going to help us expand our work even further in the Boynton Beach area. Currently, We have 9 young men that's getting ready to walk across the stage this month. I actually had one went to graduation this morning and watched one young man graduate. So that's what our program is for. We're here to help our young men be successful and be competitive once they graduate high school. And we want to make sure they make the right sound decisions. And we also, with these dollars, also want to be able to provide that safe haven for our parents as well. So with this year, we added a new dynamic with one-on-one mentoring, where we not only mentor our young men, but we also mentor the parents. So when they leave us, they go home to a healthy environment. So with, like I said, with these dollars, it will help us further our reach into the Boynton area to be able to establish a better community partners within Boynton Beach. For instance, get ready to work with Victoria from the Victory program. I've started working with Ava. Like I said, these partnerships that I want to provide not only to my young men, but also to my parents, so they know what's going on, and these dollars can circulate through the city of Boynton to be able to make a sound impact. So again, thank you for your opportunity for listening, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you. Mr. McNally, just want to confirm, was that the last speaker?
That was the last hand raise. Now, I did have a individual who has asked a question, and it is from Julian Blankenship. And the person is from the Women's Circle and wanted to know, are you considering reopening the application process to allow more organizations to apply?
All right, Mr. McNally, thank you so much. If that is the end, public comments are now closed. Now, before we proceed to staff presentation, I just want to make sure that all members of the public here and all those listening to this recording and broadcast are fully aware of what this meeting is for. This is a City Commission workshop for the sole purpose of educating all members of the Commission of the ARP program and what that law entails. What does it allow for? What are our options? As many of you know, we have 3 new members of the Commission. And so we decided as a body in the previous commission meeting, in the April 19th meeting, to ensure that everyone is fully educated and had an opportunity to ask their questions so we can make intelligent and deliberate decisions. So with that being said, I'd like to ask Mr. Scott to begin with the presentations.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioner. David Scott, Director of Economic Development and Strategy for the City of Boynton Beach. We are here before you at your request to present information about the ARP, American Rescue Plan Act, and the status and the activities to date, and to answer any questions that you may have of staff regarding that report. I would like to introduce our team. We had an internal ARP team that shepherded most of this project through and continued to track it and continue to do the reporting as necessary to the Department of Treasury. That is Mara Fredrickson, Corinne Elliott, RJ Ramirez, John Durgan, myself, and Carice Lejeune. So without them, I just want to personally thank them for all the hard work that they have done and continue to do. And as you may or may not know, Corinne has moved on to a new opportunity, a new job, but because she believes in this commission and this city, she is here presenting virtually today to continue this out. So we want to thank her for her support as we go forward. So at this point, I would like to turn it over to Carice and allow. I didn't say Corinne, did I just say Corinne? Corinne, I'm so sorry. Carice is today has found a new job. And so she is presenting today as her last act on behalf of the City of Boynton Beach. So thank you. So Carice, at this time, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, David. Good evening, Mayor, members of the Commission, city staff, and members of the audience. I would like to do an overview of the American Rescue Plan Act so that all of our city commissioners are well apprised of what it contains and the rules and the regulations. So let me get right to it. So the American Rescue Plan Act, it was signed into law on March 11th, 2021 by the U.S. Department of Treasury. And they had four main objectives, which you can see up on the screen. The first being, of course, to support the urgent COVID-19 response efforts, to continue to decrease the spread of the virus and to bring the pandemic under control. And the next objective was to replace lost revenue. States, local municipalities, counties, territorial, tribal governments, they were all lost revenue and were not able to fully perform their governmental services. So a large portion was to help them get back on their feet. To support immediate economic stabilization of households and businesses for people who were really hurt by the loss of jobs, by having to stay within their homes. Businesses went out of business, some lost a lot of revenue. And then to address the systematic public health and economic challenges that contributed to the unequal impact of the pandemic. While many households and businesses were impacted negatively, there were a disproportionate section of our community that was negatively impacted, and this money was also meant to address their issues. Next slide, please. So let's look at the original ARPA as an overview. The city of Boynton Beach was allocated $13,647,904, but that was split into 2 years. I'm assuming by this point that the entire amount has been distributed to the city of Boynton Beach. Now, the interim final rule was released shortly after the bill was approved, and they had 5 areas where they wanted to see the money spent. Public health, which of course addresses the COVID needs and other urgent public health needs. Economic hardship, as I had talked about, the negative impact and disproportionate impact of communities and households and businesses, but also to look at hardest hit industries as well, which was tourism and restaurant, for an example. Revenue loss, again, in order to provide those vital public services to the community, governments needed to get back on their feet in lieu of the lost revenue. Premium pay was to offer extra or enhanced compensation for the health and financial risks that essential workers face. They were looking at essential workers such as your first responders, obviously your police and fire and EMS, but also those other, in my mind, heroes that went to work every day, your sanitation workers and your public works workers and utility workers who kept the city running behind the scenes while the rest of us were stuck inside. And then, of course, your water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure, investing in that key infrastructure so that cities could continue to deliver clean water and, of course, reliable broadband internet access, which is important because everyone knows that by having broadband internet access to everyone, you are now leveling the playing field, not only for commerce, but for education. Next slide, please. So what can we not use it on? So you cannot use ARPA dollars to pay financial indebtedness for the city, for money that you've borrowed, or for interest or principal on any outstanding debt. For example, you could not pay off your debt service for a municipal bond. You could not use it for any reduction in net tax revenue that was due to a change in the law, regulation, or administrative interpretation. Settlement agreements, judgments, or consent decrees, you could not use the money for any type of legal action. You can't put it into your pension fund. Infrastructure, any infrastructure that is not strictly addressed in the ARPA, and you cannot use it for federal matching requirements for grants. However, there are instances where you could use it for other state or local matching requirements, but those you need to look at on a case-by-case basis. And of course, any rainy day fund or financial reserves. I know a lot of cities had to dig deep into their financial reserves just to keep afloat during COVID, but ARPA, the Treasury has determined that you cannot use this money to replenish those financial reserves. Next slide, please. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the history of how we got to the master spending plan. And this goes back to July of 2020 when the Boynton Beach City Commission created a task force to address the racial and social equities in the city. Now, a partnership with the Florida International University, FIU, they were able to develop a community needs assessment, and that looked at the racial and social equity strategies to incorporate policies and actions. And they focused these in 5 equity pillars, which was healthcare, education, housing, public safety, and economic opportunity. Now, right around the same time that they were finishing up that report, the city in 2021 did a citywide survey. They invited the residents and the businesses to tell us, the city, what they felt were their greatest needs and concerns because of COVID. So city staff took the combined data from the FIU assessment and from the community survey and melded that together with ARPA and created 5 equity pillars. We prioritized eligible programs and services and interventions based on those needs from those 2 other processes. Those were the result of that was the 5 community assessment priorities. Next slide, please. So under those community assessment priorities, we took what were eligible uses under ARPA, and we were able to fit many of those ARPA eligible uses into those 5 community assessment priorities. And you can see across the top, going back to the FIU study, we have the economic stability and resilience. We have housing affordability and home ownership, educational opportunities and job skill development, healthcare access and health outcomes, and criminal justice and safety. And those came from the FIU survey combined along with the citizen survey. And you can see underneath each one of those priorities what the different eligible uses are. Next slide, please. So a little bit more history. As a recipient for the coronavirus state local fiscal recovery funds, otherwise referred to as CSL FRF or shorthand FRF, it's a little easier to say. the city of Boynton Beach at the December 7th ARPA workshop, Commission voted to respond to the negative impacts of COVID by providing pass-through funding. So the city of Boynton Beach is the recipient, and they voted to pass through ARPA funds to sub-recipient agencies and nonprofits in the city to work and provide those services, programs, and interventions through existing evidence-based programs. And that's very important because the city is not necessarily in the social service business. And we have many, many of those type of agencies and nonprofits in the city. The key here, though, is looking for those subrecipients who have evidence-based programs. That is a direct quote from the Treasury's interim final rule and final rule that the subrecipient needs to use programs that are proven. And there's an entire section in the final rule and interim final rule that talks about what an evidence-based program is. Well, at that same meeting, the city staff was directed to create a notice of funding opportunity, which we call NOFOs, through a grant application process. The city commission wanted it reviewed by January 4th. So you can see below, that was the schedule that we worked on starting in December 15th through March 9th. Next slide, please. So the city, as the recipient of federal Treasury dollars, is responsible for making sure that those funds are used for eligible purposes by the subrecipients. Administration of funds by subrecipients have to be in compliance with all of these federal regulations. You may recognize some of them, the Treasury Final Rule, the Compliance and Reporting Guidance, C2FR 200, which is the Code of Federal Regulations, and then the Office of Management and Budget Compliance Supplement, also put out by the federal government. So the city as a recipient has to adhere to all of these rules and regulations and guidance, but so does the subrecipients as pass-through entities receiving funding. So the city looked at a set of common factors for risk-based due diligence, and we built that into the NOFO grant application and scoring criteria. Some of the eligibility requirements we were looking for was prior experience in managing federal funds. There's a lot of detailed reporting that go along with managing federal funds. So it's not something that you want to make sure that the entity receiving the pass-through funds can manage that. Also, previous audits, personnel, and the policies and procedures for award execution and oversight. So 18 out of 20 applicants were determined eligible and were scored and ranked by the ARPA review team. Since that time, one of the applicants have withdrawn their application, that's St. John's, and so now we have 17 eligible ranked applicants. So these rankings were provided to the City Commission to make the final determination, and any award of funding will be contingent on contract negotiations with the subrecipient for budget and scope of services. And the reason that we do that is because the application, we were looking at risk-based eligibility. But before we enter into any contract, we want to make sure that their budget and their scope of services that is going to be built into the contract, that every element adheres to the rules and regulations put forth by the Treasury. Next slide, please. So here is a current ARPA expenditure budget. And as you can see down at the very bottom, the total available funds at this point is approximately 6.2 million. If you have any specific or detailed questions about this spreadsheet, then perhaps at the end of the presentation, your finance director, Ms. Mara Fredrickson, would be better suited to answer those questions for you. Next slide, please. So you've heard me talk about the interim final rule, which came out in May of 2021. But then in January of 2022, the Treasury released a final rule. Now that took effect on April 1st for 2022. And you could apply elements from the final rule in your master spending plan, but as of April 1st, you could no longer go by the interim final rule. You had to make sure that you were adhering to the final rule. And it actually delivers broader flexibility and greater simplicity in the program than the interim final rule. So some of the key changes: replacing lost public sector revenue. So in the interim final rule, there was for me, a complicated formula that finance departments had to plug into to come up with what they considered to be their lost revenue for every fiscal period for 3 years. Now the final rule offers a standard allowance revenue loss of 10 million. That allows the recipients to select between a standard amount of revenue loss or complete a full revenue loss calculation. The city, by choosing the standard allowance revenue loss for 10 million, means that the 6.2 million that is left over at this point could be used for replacing lost public revenue. Things that you might think of using, because it has to be used for government services, but government services are considered to be anything that the government, the city of Boynton Beach, would normally do, and that includes capital improvement projects and purchases, such as the, let's see, a communication safety tower, a large stormwater project, or even the purchase of vehicles or equipment for your life safety personnel. Now, looking at the public health and economic impacts, the final rule clarified recipients can now use capital expenditures that support the public health or economic response. So some certain types of affordable housing or childcare facilities, hospitals, clinics, you could now use some of that money for those type of capital projects. They've also expanded the definition of what type of households and communities are assumed to be impacted or disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. And there's, again, a broader set of uses to restore and support government employment. if you had to hire back people who were laid off during COVID pandemic. Premium pay, the final rule delivers more options. So it broadens the share of eligible workers who can receive premium pay. It used to be there were a certain amount of eligible uses, and anybody outside of that, you had to provide written justification on why you felt that they should get premium pay. But they've actually broadened that category. And of course, to maintain a focus on lower income and frontline workers that are performing the essential work. And finally, for water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure, it significantly broadened the eligible infrastructure investments to address the challenges of broadband access, affordability, reliability, and it added additional eligible water and sewer infrastructure investments. Prior to this, they would only accept those type that were listed in your state clean water revolving funds, but now they've given a broader range of the types of infrastructure investments you can make. And they also have in their lead remediation and stormwater management projects. Next slide, please. So going back to the original ARPA eligible uses, and again, this is different from the community priorities that staff had created based on FIU and the community-wide survey. Going back to these, you have your public health, economic hardship, revenue loss, premium pay, water, sewer, broadband infrastructure, and I've put in there that the eligible uses that have been added since the interim final rule. So next slide, please. Okay, I know this is like really, really busy, and I don't expect everyone to be able to see this, but I just wanted to kind of show you that these are expenditure categories that were created by the US Treasury, starting with number 1, public health, and all the different categories underneath it. Go to the next slide, please. Through 6 revenue replacement and 7 administration. So all of these categories, as you can see, there's public health and premium pay and infrastructure. Anything that the city decides to expend or distribute ARPA funds for, we have to make sure that it fits into one of those categories. These categories are used for reporting into the US Treasury portal. So we have to be able to say that, yes, this project falls under this category, and if it doesn't, then we should not be expending the money on that. Next slide, please. So at this point in time, if you have any questions or if you want to go back and look at another slide, this is your time.
Ms. Lejeune, thank you so much for that presentation. As always, I find you to be extremely informative and helpful. I do have several questions. I'll ask a few for now, and then I'll pass off the microphone to others. One of the things that's really important for me to understand, I think for everyone, is the difference between a pass-through organization versus a direct recipient. Could you talk about that? Because that would tell us what kind of organizations and what kind of qualifications they might have in order for them to qualify as a pass-through organization.
Of course, and that's a very good question. The Treasury in their questions and answers, which they have sent out several reiterations of, that's a very prominent question, because a direct beneficiary, you can think of them as the end user. They are the person who, at the end of the money trail, get the money to help remediate against a negative impact. So if it's a household that needs rent, if it's a worker who needs job skills or job relocation, anyone who is receiving the ARPA dollars as an end user due to the negative impacts of COVID, they are considered a beneficiary. A subrecipient is an organization or a nonprofit agency that takes the ARPA money and they pass it through to an end user, to a beneficiary. As I stated earlier, you know, city government, we have roles and responsibilities to the citizens, but social services are better suited for those organizations that do that every single day, who have the experience and the people and the facilities to provide those social services. So by creating subrecipients, the US Treasury said, we understand that, government, so we're going to let you take some of your ARPA dollars and give them to other agencies and nonprofits so that they can give the money to the people in the communities, the households, the businesses who actually need the money. But the stipulation here is that if you are a subrecipient, the money is not to overcome a negative impact that you have. It is to overcome the negative impact that someone else has. You're going to be giving the money to them. And subrecipients are held to all the same rules and regulations that the city is held to. Did that answer the question adequately, sir?
Yes, it did. Thank you. What I'd like to do, because I do have more questions, but you know, this event is primarily for the newer members of the commission. So I want to open the floor to them so they can ask their questions and make sure that they are confident with ARP. Would any of you like to begin? Any questions here?
Yes, I do have one question. Carice, you know that we have a lot of projects already on the table, and we've had some very negative impact on many residents in terms of being able to find housing. Can these funds in any way be used to increase the number of affordable housing units available to the public as a result of, you know, this pandemic that we've gone through? What I'm getting at is that the developers come up and they make their presentation and they give us X number of affordable units. Based on, I think some of your key changes and the classification that you were talking about with the final rule, I think one of them talked about the public health and the economic impacts and about affordable housing. And I was just wondering, is there any way that we could say, negotiate with the developer to increase the number of affordable housing units based on getting some ARPA dollars? Does that make sense to you?
Yes, sir, it does. And it's a very good question. And your city staff working with the CRA has already helped with the Wells Landing affordable housing project. So yes, it's absolutely an eligible use. And if you say have a developer that comes in and they want to do affordable housing, or they want to do affordable housing mixed with other type of building, you have to just make sure that the ARPA dollars are going directly to the affordable housing. So for example, they come in with a mixed use project and they've got, condos and they've got some commercial, and then they have affordable housing. In your agreements, you have to upfront have them tell you what those dollars are being spent for. So if it's going to affordable housing, is it going to pay for the foundation? Is it going to pay for the materials, the flooring, the windows? What is it going to be used for in the affordable housing? And if you are providing additional dollars for them for elements of the affordable housing, logically that would free up dollars for them to create more affordable housing. So I hope that adequately answered your question, sir.
Yes, it did. Reese, thank you.
Commissioner Kelly?
Can I ask questions about this expenditure budget that's in the presentation? Okay.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. John, could you go back to that slide, please?
John, it's slide 9.
My apologies, please let me know when to stop because I don't see the slide numbers on from this view.
Okay. I'll
Am I
let
close?
you know.
Okay.
Keep going. There, stop. Nope, go back. Nope.
This one?
Forward.
No, no, you're going to go forward again. You passed it.
All right, there's too many voices giving him direction. That's probably part of the confusion. John, are you there?
I am here.
All right, just let's do one slide at a time. One slide forward, please. Next.
Community assessments.
Now keep going. One more. One more. Here.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so my question, I noticed the Small Business Assistance Grant Program. How is that different than what the applicants have already applied for? What is that expenditure for?
If I may, Vice Mayor, I would like to give this to John Durgan. He is the lead on this project, and I think that he is better equipped to give you details about the program.
Thank you, Carice. John Durgan, Economic Development Manager. So the Small Business Grant Program has been approved by the previous commission. That is for-profit businesses. There's a separate program designed for them. They have to demonstrate some sort of loss of revenue due to COVID-19, and they can use that for payroll expenses, utilities, commercial rent, or mortgage payments. So their general operations as a business. The NOFOs are strictly for nonprofit. Well, they're for nonprofit and for-profit organizations, but designed specifically to address the aforementioned challenges in health, criminal justice, economic opportunity, public safety, and education. Thank you. So the NOFOs were separate specifically to address those issues. The small business program was specifically designed for those small businesses who have been economically impacted.
And has that money been used?
None of it's been used.
Okay.
So how it was initially approved, there's $345,000 for the program. $300,000 was for small businesses, and then we were looking for an organization to administer that program. There's a cap of 15% on administrative fees. That's where that additional $45,000 comes in.
And is that something that if it doesn't get used, that we can then turn around and use that for one of the non-for-profit ARPA applicants? Is that something that can be,
That would be totally up to the city commission. Yes, ma'am.
okay. And then also on this same budget, I don't know if it's your area or not, but I just had a question on the paid internship and apprenticeship program with the city. How is that involved and what is the status of that?
That's a program that our human resources department had worked on. They created a program called the Gateway Program to help outreach for internship programs here in the city, to start a formal internship program here in the city, and bring in that apprenticeship component as well for career pathway. The program design was on a smaller scale, and we were looking to scale that up. So the initial budget for that program was just a summer internship program. The cost for that would be around $50,000. We were looking to kind of scale that up and grow that, and that's where that $250,000 number came in. And that was just a rough estimate of how much that would cost to kind of really expand and make that more robust.
David Scott, Economic Development Commissioner. Just to add to that, that all that money wasn't for administration. It was also so that the interns could get paid internship program through the program. We understand that just providing internship is a great thing and provides experience, but we also understand that our youth need money to buy school supplies, et cetera. So some of that money was certainly to put money in their pockets. So that's what that money will go for as well.
Right. And is that something that's been implemented, or is that something that's on the future to happen at some point?
That is set aside. It has not been expended or allocated at this point.
Okay, thank you.
It'd be up to this commission.
Thank you. And my final question, not on budget related, but how, I know that there's a reporting process to these funds, and I know that there's some small businesses that have applied that maybe are not as maybe well versed or educated in the federal requirements. What would we do, or what as a city to assist those smaller businesses that maybe get this grant money, but they are, what's the reporting process for these federal funds, and what assistance do we provide, if any?
Yes, so we created, because we already have some subrecipient partnership agreements out there. So we created a reporting mechanism on an Excel spreadsheet, which has on the first tab all of the information that the U.S. Treasury asks us, from their address, tax ID number, their EUI number, which is a SAM.gov grant number. That's a must. If we're going to have a subrecipient, they have to have that identification number, at least before the money is distributed to them. And also the reporting. So on that double slide that I showed you that had all the different categories, the expenditure categories, there are many of them that have required reporting, and you can tell because they either have a caret and or an asterisk next to it. And those are reporting requirements, and they change for the type of program that's being run. And that's why someone who is experienced, who has evidence-based programs, they're already collecting that type of specific data for the programs that they're running. So it's easy for them to report. Opposed to an organization that maybe has not done this before, they would need to show that what they're running is evidence-based, and how they're going to be collecting that data that can then be uploaded into the U.S. Treasury portal. And then The second tab lists out all of those reporting requirements based upon what program they're running. And then the last tab on the reporting document that the subrecipient is to give to the city every quarter is their budget. And they have to show what they have expended of the money that was given to them. And they also have to provide receipts for every penny that was expended. And the city has the ability that if the expenditure was not an eligible use, the city will not reimburse for those receipts or that expenditure. Did that sufficiently answer the question, Vice Mayor?
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from members of the board?
Yeah, if I could extend on Commissioner Kelly's question. I guess I want to get into the timeline. Will the funding be given all up front, or will it be in stages based on inspections of some kind? And is there a timeline for these funds to be used? Otherwise, they go back somewhere.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Excellent question. So yes, all of the funding needs to be expended no later than December 31st of 2024, unless it is a capital project, which then the funds are encumbered, need to be completely spent by 2026 of December 31st. I'm sorry, what was the first part of the question, sir? I apologize.
Will the funding be given all up front, or will it be in stages based on some type of inspection or evaluation?
Yes, sir. So at this point in time, working with the finance director, it's set up that everything will be on a reimbursement basis. And the reason for that is simply because that is what the US Treasury has recommended. Now, understanding that things are fluid and flexible, for example, our partnerships with the elementary schools that needed to buy supplies and equipment in order to start their programs, we knew that they did not have the opportunity or the funding to go buy those and then reimburse unless it was coming out of the teacher's pocket. So some of those funds were given up front, but it was also very small amounts, so that if there was ever a default in the eligible use of the expenditure, the city could ideally cover that. Just keep in mind that when you're talking about millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars, if you give that money up front and it's spent and it wasn't spent on an eligible use, if you can't get the money back from that subrecipient, the city will have to eat that and pay it back to the US Treasury. Did that answer the question, sir?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have some questions if everyone else is done.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to thank my colleagues for allowing this. I was very uninformed in this, and I did not want to have to make any decisions without educating myself further. I'm not feeling too well, so I apologize for my questions if they're a little bit ignorant. So just so I understand, we have $6.2 million in this second set of funding from ARPA, correct?
Yes and no, sir. We did get a second set of funding that was a little over $6 million, but taking into consideration the entire 13 some odd million, and then going through all of the projects that we were looking at, that spreadsheet right here.
Right.
So most of that is either spent or encumbered, and that looks at the entire 13. So if you look at the very top, the initial payment, 6.8 million.
Got it. So that
yeah,
anticipated payment is already, we've already allocated those funds.
yes, sir. We allocated the entire 13.6 except for 6.2.
Right. Yeah, 6.2 million.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the $6.2 million that we have now, with the pass through. So just so, and again, I'm sorry if I understood this incorrectly. Are we entitled to utilize all 6.2 million through NOFOs, or can we still invest in infrastructure and allocate these funds to public services?
That's an excellent question, sir. That 6.2 million can be distributed however the city commission votes to do so.
Okay.
You can use all of it for NOFO. You can use a portion of it for NOFO. You can now dedicate it all to government services or capital investments based on the change in the revenue loss rule.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you for clearing that up. Another question. So this was pulled from the White House's website. It looks like our president is recommending funding this ARPA funding to make our communities safer in terms of, more community officers, technology, vehicles, etc. Has our task force looked into what the White House has released on May 13th?
I would defer to Mr. Scott on that. I've not been a part of the city staff for several weeks now, but during the time that I was there, I don't know, David, can you answer that one for the commissioner?
Absolutely. Thank you, Carice. Commissioner, yes, we have been keeping abreast of the new releases, and Carice does an excellent job of sending us any updates. As you see from the priority pillars, public safety was one of those. We could either decide to use that as a pass-through and have one of our community members address public safety through that pillar, and the community members came back with, or the service providers came back with mentoring programs, keeping kids out of trouble in the first place, those types of things. But as Carice mentioned, it can be used for direct city services. She mentioned public safety vehicles. So the commission can certainly decide to redirect some of that money for other activities.
Okay. Okay. Good to know. And then another thing that kind of stuck out to me, and I just want to make sure, we do have the ability to allocate some of those funds into infrastructure. I think storm drainage was one of those that I heard. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. 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 I think that's all I have now. Again, I think, like Mayor said, this is more educational, so I won't talk too much. But thank you guys again for making this happen. Thank you for your answers and clearing up the pass through. At first, I was under the impression that we had to spend all 6.2 million for the NOFO. So thank you for clearing that up.
Vice Mayor?
Yep, and I think that was one of the purposes of having this meeting, to understand that, because I actually thought that too at the beginning. I would like to ask if we can return to the slide where it talks about infrastructure funding.
Okay, let's see, try my luck.
Go
Is that
forward.
it? Oh, further, okay.
Forward. Another one. Another one. Another one. Okay. Right there. Stay right there. No, yeah, there. Okay. So under the eligible uses, the water, sewer, broadband infrastructure, again, you can invest in infrastructure to deliver clean water, and that can be water infrastructure projects, sewer infrastructure projects, and stormwater infrastructure projects. Projects that are eligible under the state revolving loan fund for clean water and sewer. All of those projects are eligible, and I know that your utility director could provide you with a list of those. Green projects supporting climate change. There are several suggested types of projects under climate change that has to do with flooding and other green. Rebecca Harvey, she is your sustainability coordinator. She would be a good resource to find out what kind of projects the city may be looking at. And then delivering broadband, they're looking at the first and last mile of broadband to make sure that everyone is receiving the ability to have high-speed internet, as we all learned during COVID, for schoolwork and keeping a job. It was almost imperative that you have high-speed internet.
Thank you very much for that explanation. I would like to make a comment and potentially ask staff to look into this. According to something that may have happened earlier last week, if I understand it correctly, we had a bit of a issue with sewage. Can we elaborate a little bit on that, interim city manager?
Yes, Andrew Mack, Assistant City Manager, Public Services. So along Federal Highway, we have a section that was clogged due to grease in our gravity sewer system, and it surcharged our system. Once we got the call, we were able to respond and dislodge the grease right away, which then subsided the sewage. But we did have a spill that did come out to the street into a small water body that's near there. This is something that we are looking at. We are down one employee who does environmental inspections on grease traps. So we are being challenged right now. I have 27 or 28 vacancies in utilities right now that I'm trying to work on. There are some challenges that we're working through. We are looking at several options to help mitigate this in the future, but this is something that's high on our radar that we are definitely taking into account.
Thank you. And I guess the reason why I wanted to ask that question, it's because we have a potential opportunity, and I would like the commission to take a look at this and see that we have, potential issue in the city with sewage and water that we need to support, and we need to think about who are we as a body. We are the City Commission of Boynton Beach, and we want to make sure that the funds that we're spending are allocated towards helping the residents of Boynton Beach. And with that being said, I would like to see if there's any way that we could spend some of those ARPA funds to help this kind of situation. But first, obviously, we'd have to figure out, how much we would need. And that was kind of my thought on that. Obviously, there's enough money to potentially do other things with it, but I would like to emphasize that, potentially providing some funding towards that purpose would be beneficial to the residents of Boynton Beach.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just one thing I'd like to mention about the utilities section. There are, as we've been going through this process, and David and Carice can both opine on this, that there's other funding sources that have been made available that we could use alternatively to this ARPA funding. So those are becoming available. They're now coming down, and we will be submitting. We did receive a $16.5 million DEO grant to do some drainage and infrastructure work in the what's the name of that neighborhood? I'm forgetting.
Sandcastle.
Sandcastle. Yes, sorry. still working on a couple hours of sleep. And we're very excited that project's in the use of that fund. So it's a design and construction grant that we received. So some of those will be coming down and made available. So I don't know about these particular funds, but will be going for those type of grants and as they continuously roll out.
And thank you for all of you for being here. I know we had a late night last night and many of us are exhausted, so thank you.
Thank you for that. I just want to add on the topic of infrastructure, not that I'm opposed to it. Carice, Ms. Lejeune, I think you had a slide here in terms of the updated ruling. If we could go to that slide, the updated final rule.
Sorry, that would go backwards, John. Okay, there,
Right there.
that one.
Under the category of public health and economic impacts, it says here funds for capital expenditures that support things like affordable housing. Commissioner Hay has already mentioned that. Childcare facilities, schools, hospitals, and other projects consistent with final rule requirement. As many of you know, a topic I bring up all the time, and I'm going to keep bringing it up until it finally happens, is that we have a food desert in District 2. And for the longest time, I have been talking about getting a grocery store to be built in that area. Ms. Lejeune, would it be eligible for use of funds if we were to allocate, not necessarily to build an entire grocery store, but merely to use it as some sort of partnership grant or incentive funding so we can help attract a grocery store to come in and make that finally a reality? Is that possible? What are the boundaries on that?
Yes, sir. That is an excellent question. I am going to share with you what I do know because I cannot definitively tell you yes or no. It's kind of a connecting the dots situation. So under public health and economic impact, food insecurity is identified. And then you have the ability to use funds for capital expenditures under public health and economic impacts. So you can put those two together that yes, to remediate a food insecurity, you could use these dollars for capital expenditure. The devil is always in the detail. What would you use the money for? I cannot say for sure if it's an allowable use to use it as an incentive. That's something that I would recommend staff do a little digging on, contact the Treasury or contact E11 Bloomberg. They've been working very closely with the Treasury as well as the National League of Cities. Looking at the FAQs put out by the US Treasury. There have been FAQs that have been released post my involvement. So I would check all of those to see if anyone has asked that specific question, because I do know that a capital expenditure to reduce or eliminate food insecurity is an eligible use. But how those dollars are used in that capital expenditure, I'm not qualified at this moment to say it can be used as incentives or if it has to be physical built environment or materials.
Chris, this is Jim Stables. Would it be possible to utilize that money in a public-private partnership to do what the mayor is speaking of? Possibly.
Yes, absolutely. But again, it's where are the dollars going? Are the dollars going to materials? Are the dollars going to actual construction? Are the dollars going to incentivize construction? that's where you need to get the opinion from the Treasury.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lejeune. I appreciate that input, and I hope that the support of my colleagues that funding for alleviating food insecurity in an area that has struggled with it for decades should be considered a top priority. I know that the community's been asking for this for decades, and we finally have some money, and if there's anything that we can do, I am open to making that commitment. But that's where I stand on that. So let's open the floor to others. Commissioner Hay, had your hand
I
up?
was just going to say that I too been talking about this for some time, decades, and we have not gotten it because it's my understanding, and I'm not clear on it, but a proper grocery store and square footage would open opportunities for other revenues and resources if we had the proper size grocery store in there. And so if there's any way that we can find out about the ARPA funding, that would be a major step in the right direction for District 2. So I'm all for that, and I'm going to be leaning heavily on staff to research that for us and come back with an answer.
Commissioner Kelly, did you have your hand up?
Well, earlier I had asked about the Small Business Assistance Grant Program, and if that money does not get allocated because it is a funds that are deemed for a for-profit use, is that something, would a small scale grocery fit the criteria as a small business to use that or a portion of that grant money for assistance and for that purpose, as opposed to the stricter ARPA funds?
Good evening, John Durgan, Economic Development Manager. So that program is specifically designed for established businesses that have been established prior to the pandemic that can demonstrate some sort of loss of revenue due to the pandemic. So unfortunately, probably couldn't use those funds for that purpose.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Turkin, was that you?
Yep. So I just want to say, to all of y'all, my colleagues, when we were at the strategic planning workshop, I think we all kind of decided on what our vision was for the city. We were going to be proactive instead of reactive. We decided collectively that public safety was our #1 priority. We thought about economic development, the housing crisis, and infrastructure. So I just want to remind you all on what we all decided on and all collectively looked into and what our vision was going to be. And we have an opportunity to execute and literally, I hate to make a pun, but put our money where our mouth is. So I just advise, that everyone consider, what we spoke about at our strategic planning workshop when it comes for us to make that decision and how we allocate these funds.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else? Any questions or comments? Staff? Any final words? All right. That sounds like the end of this evening. Oh, all right, Commissioner Hay.
No. I may be out of order, but based on the information that's been shared, I wonder would it be proper for a few minutes to listen to what the public has gotten out of this, then share with us, like we have gotten some information and eye openers out of this. Maybe they can share some of their eye openers with us just for a few minutes.
Commissioner, we did have a public comment period already.
Okay.
However, I
agree with Commissioner Hay.
All right. So we have 2 individuals, and my recommendation would be I'd open the floor to a motion to amend the agenda so we can add another public audience period.
I so move that we do.
All right. We have a motion, and Commissioner?
I second that.
Thank you. We have a second. All those in favor of amending the agenda to add a second public comment period, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, the ayes have it. The motion passes. The agenda is amended. All right, so if anybody would like to speak, as always, you have 3 minutes. Begin when you are ready.
Hi, I'm Victoria with the Victory Program. Something I didn't state is I have transitional housing where I house 4 returning citizens, and I have wraparound services if they need mental health. I address that. Job, on the job training, resume building, total wraparound that I can't even list everything right now, but I'm active, so I know that we have a housing crisis. And my organization, I can put properties into my name. And with that funding that I asked for, is 25,000 of it is for housing, which there is a crisis. And I am a convicted felon. I cannot get a place in my name unless they meet me, unless they hear my story and they see what I've made out of my felony. So I just want you guys to take that into consideration. I didn't ask for, millions of dollars, just something to help get a push. And I think this community could use it. I mean, we talk about some of these neighborhoods, it's just horrible. And somebody like me that's been through it, I work with them every step of the way. It's not just, all right, let's place them in housing because there's a housing crisis. No, it's let's hold their hand step by step. And I just think that was really important. And I didn't get to tell you about my housing. I'm going to let other people speak, and just please take that into consideration. God bless.
Thank you.
Good evening, Gloria Goldsby, 327 Boynton Bay Circle. I'm speaking as a community person in Boynton. I don't think you all are aware, but there was an assessment done that was sent out. And those points up there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the community is the one who made that decision, the order that it should be in. And I would respectfully ask that you take that into consideration. This is a COVID-related grant. We suffered through COVID. We suffered. We understand there is a problem in the city. It was there before COVID hit us. So please, I'm begging you. I am a certified behavioral health case manager. I have clients out there who are homeless. I feed them. I take them to the doctors. We have housing for them. I make sure the children are okay. I communicate with the doctors and the landlords to please keep them where they are until I can find resources for them. So please, I'm begging you. I'm growing weary with the work that I do out there. I don't get paid for it. I don't. I lost my job in 2018 when the mental health facility was closed, and I'm still taking care of those clients. So I'm begging you to consider that. We made a decision for that to be in the order that it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please approach the podium.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Sandra Watson, and I just have a couple of questions because I'm a little confused. The $6.2 million that we're talking about, is that the funds that you allowed the non-for-profits to give you the budget and their budgets, and that's what they're going for? And now, and then is that the same money, or is that a different pot of what you guys have already allocated, what you want to use the 6.2 million for?
So public comment is not a Q&A. However, staff is available to address your questions.
Okay.
But you still have 2 more minutes on the clock.
Okay, and the other thing is that on that budget sheet where you had the 6.2 million already allocated, I noticed that you had like some things that were extended and some things that were obligated. Like you have 44,200 for food assistance already. So I was wondering how that works. And then you had 75,000 for rent assistance for P2P, and I was just trying to figure out how that works. So if the staff could kind of like help me with that, because I'm just a little confused. It looks like we got one pot and we got two different programs trying to get money from that same pot. You understand? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Sherry Johnson, Boynton Beach Faith-Based CDC. Let's talk about a grocery store. This has been going around for quite a long time. In 2006, 2007, I presented a concept paper to the City Commission and also the Chamber of Commerce to create a public-private partnership with nonprofits for a grocery store. It needs to be a nonprofit. You cannot bring a regular grocery store into the community because you're not really making it affordable. It's the price of food that needs to be affordable. And right now, what we're missing in this community is protein. You need a great nonprofit butcher shop and produce stand to get that protein and fresh vegetables out. You've done the research for a long time on bringing a market in here. We talked about that where the dollar store is. It did not give you what you wanted in the way of a grocery store. There is tax incentives that relate to development that you can't get because you haven't had that really grocery store. So you cut the legs out of a grocery and gave it to a dollar store so that those tax incentives could be, but it didn't serve the community. So what I'm proposing, and it is in our grant application, Ty, to put that kind of a nonprofit butcher produce market, and we're looking at that development along MLK to make it accessible close to Federal Highway. But it does need to be nonprofit because you don't want that commercial markup that grocery stores would have. It needs to be affordable. So I'd ask you to consider that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Johnson. And we will connect afterwards. Next speaker.
Victoria Joseph, Boynton Beach, Faith-Based CDC 2191 North Seacrest Boulevard. I'm going to echo some of what Gloria, Ms. Goldby just said. We had two community needs survey done in this community, one by FIU, one by FAU, and the third one by the city. The community has spoken. They came up with 5 of the pillars that are important to them. There's been a long-standing infrastructure problem in the city of Boynton Beach. Didn't just start because we just got some Arpa money. The infrastructure is ongoing. As Mr. Mack said, they're looking for grants now to take care of that. But it would be unfair, and I'm putting it nicely, for you to now consider taking ARPA money to help people who were impacted by COVID to address the infrastructure problems in the city. That would be unfair. The community has come at you 3 different surveys, and the community has spoken. I implore you to listen to the community and do what the community says they need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Cassandra Corbin Thaddeus with Connect to Greatness. I'm just coming to just make a comment in addition to what everybody else has said already. Whatever way you decide to go, please, I heard Commissioner Turkin mention being proactive, and that's what I would advise us to really think about when it comes to where are the youth in whatever it is that we do. And being proactive to ensure that we are thinking about our youth today, because they're going to be our adults tomorrow. And, you know, when we have these conversations, their voices are never really considered as we're thinking about our plans, as we're thinking about our funds. And again, they're the ones who are impacted by public health. And I can't read the other one that's up there, but that second column there, they're impacted by that. And they were always being reactive to what we need to do for them because of what's happening to them. And so I would just ask that we really think about where our youth fit in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other in-person speakers? All right.
Sheila Gaines, 2500 Quantum Lakes Drive. Man, my chest is extremely heavy right now. Everybody in this room goes out and we give and give and give and give. And a lot of the work that we do, we aren't even compensated for it because we're doing it from our heart and the love of community. I was so excited when I sat in that room and when I sat in that room and we talked about the equity study, and I was proud to be a community servant, whatever you want to call me, for Boynton Beach. Because I said Boynton Beach got it right. They do care about their people. Not to talk badly about anyone else, but they didn't go and build an entire water plan and say, you fight over these $2 million because that's what we're going to do. I was so proud. But now I sit here and I don't know if I can be so proud because I don't even know how this is going to go. You got all these people in the room that are begging for a chance to expand what they do in the community. And a lot of us are doing it for free. This is not a plug, I'm not plugging it. We do casual conversations at Sarah Downs Park every Thursday, rain or shine, for free. We go down to West Palm Beach to the Youth Empowerment Center, and we go down there and we do what we have to do for free. We're just asking for a little help. Whether you help us or you help somebody else, just help someone. COVID has done a number on all of us. We've lost employees, we've lost family members, we've just lost as a unit. If you green, black, orange, yellow, white, whatever, we have lost. Don't let us lose again. We're imploring you guys to please help. I'm not begging for it. The city is and the community is. Please help us. At the end of the day, we have a love for community and the work is going to get done regardless.
Thank you. Last call for in-person speakers. Just approach the podium and begin when you're ready.
Good evening. My name is Monica Roundtree Cleckley, board certified family nurse practitioner. And I recently opened or moved my medical practice from the west side to the east side here in my hometown in Boynton Beach, Premier Medical Center of Boynton. One thing that I found out being back in business for 1 year with the pandemic, a lot of people, so we have all these great resources because I think I'm an anomaly because I'm a for-profit, but I saw an opportunity to do something because being a startup business, funds are not always there. Doing the same thing, seeing patients and not charging them. And one of the largest things I found in practice was Jerome Golden's closed, and I'm dealing with a lot of mental health issues. And so what I actually did was I enrolled back in school to get my postmaster's psych mental health nurse practitioner certification so I can take care of those patients that I cannot send out into the community. And so the grant that I asked for, I just really was trying to help find a way that I can help other people in the community, because even with these resources, patients still are not being seen. They're still not getting their COVID vaccines or having their access. I remember sitting in here and you guys are giving the little cards back because no one came and got the COVID vaccines, but I'm seeing them in practice. And so as a for-profit, I just wanted to find a way where you all can help me not struggle and be in the red to take care of some of the people in the community that I'm already taking care of for free. So when I first heard about the grant, I was super excited, had no idea what I was doing, had to get some help and assistance, but it just was money to help me help our community. Because even with Found Care and all these other resources, people are still falling through the cracks. Even with the alliances and these groups that come together with the big umbrellas, people are still falling through the cracks. So I just wanted the opportunity to be able to help our community. And I'm not sure what you guys are gonna do. I just wanted to kind of let you know why I'm the only for-profit that applied and where my heart was. It's not about the money for me. And then some others in the community were asking, are you gonna open it back up for other opportunities for other people to be able to apply? I don't know if that's gonna be talked about this evening, but I just thank you for the opportunity to even apply. I learned a lot from the process, and I'm going to have my other nonprofit that will be able to take care of people in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Monica. Next speaker, and I believe you are the last one. Oh, one more. All right, after you.
Thank you. Jennifer Ray again with Aid to Victims of Domestic Abuse. I want to speak from two places. Obviously, I'm here on behalf of the organization, knowing that the services are critical for the citizens of Boynton Beach, but I'm not a citizen of Boynton Beach. I actually live in Lantana, and this is where I play. This is where I do things in my community. You are my community because Lantana doesn't have that. My son has gone to your summer camps. So when they say that their community has spoken about what they need, I feel like I need to come back and support that those surveys have said what this community needs for their citizens as someone who is your neighbor and knows what value that brings even to people just outside of your city. Secondarily, I want to remind you that domestic violence increased during COVID and continues to remain at high rates. The FBI talked about, released a study that in 2020, the number of murders had increased tremendously. I think my CEO has texted me the number because I'm trying to get all that for you so that you have it. But what I do know about murders of women is that they are typically killed by their partner in their home. We're trying to keep them alive with services, with food, with jobs, with housing. And I understand that there's a need for sewage and infrastructure. There's no minimizing that at all. But as a grant writer for my organization, I understand also that there are lots of resources we can look at for different things to support those. And in some cases, I feel like maybe it's my perception, but there are more grant opportunities available for that, not what we're doing necessarily. And so we work together collaboratively to make sure our community is taken care of with the limited dollars that are available in social services and housing and economic stability and justice for families in our community. So I do hope that I agree the community was assessed and the need is there and it's clear, and not just for my organization and the services we provide, but for the community that I also play in on a regular basis, that I bring my son to summer camp in to learn and grow, because you are providing that for our families. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr.
My name it continues to be Chuck Ridley, and I have the privilege of being the political coordinator for SCIU. Let's start with public safety. There is no bigger investment in public safety that you can make other than housing, mental health, and taking care of young people and keeping them engaged. Too often, what is considered as buying more technology and more things. But what's going to keep folks safe are going to be the people in your room, in this room, particularly connecting with law enforcement and providing for you maybe a different use of the word infrastructure. You got your infrastructure here. You have a human infrastructure that will be able to do things with these dollars that are one time coming through your system than any other dollars that you are going to be able to identify. So as you talk about the capital needs, particularly around the food desert, I resonate with that. But you also have a CRA. I resonate with that. Get creative there. As you talk about the infrastructure, and the needs that you have with sewer. Now, you know, many of my members work in that department. So, but I also know that there's a plethora of dollars coming this way that can begin to address your infrastructure needs. As you talk about public safety and law enforcement, which is a critical conversation, but You know, you have to figure out that balance between how do you police the community and how do you actually serve a community as a public servant. The true definition of a public servant is someone who takes care of the needs of those that can't help them. It is easy to address the concerns of those that sit in powerful positions. But when you take care of the needs of those who may not ever be able to come tell you thank you, but you know you've done it, is the way that this commission, which is really, you have your chance to do something wonderful, seize the moment.
Thank you so much. I believe that is the end of in-person public comments. Mr. McNally, is there anybody online with their hands up?
There is a Pam O'Brien. I am unmuting you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you. I'm Pam O'Brien. I'm president and CEO of Afta, which stands for Aid to Victims of Domestic Abuse. You've already heard from our awesome Chief Program Officer, Jennifer Ray. In addition to just supporting all the statements that she has said to help you be aware of just how serious the issue of domestic violence is in Boynton Beach, I want to support that and make sure that you are very much aware of that. As we have seen, and out of our 37 years of existence, we have never seen the demand for services as we have now. We have also never seen the level of dangerousness that the people we serve are faced with. They truly are having people out to kill them in their own homes. And she was referencing the report from the FBI themselves in the fall of 2020. They released a report saying, oh my goodness, in the entire time of our existence of keeping records, which I think was over 60 years, they've never had a year like the year before in terms of the number of murders of people killed, particularly in their home by guns. So this is a tremendous issue and it affects your community. On a different note, as CEO, I just want to let you know a few things about Afta as well. We pride ourselves on accountability, transparency, excellence. We have had, I've been there 20 years. We've had 20 years of perfect, clean, independent audits with no findings. We have a long history of performance and managing numerous federal grants and doing exceptionally well with that as well. So we know how to handle all the responsibilities that come with being a subrecipient. In addition to that, Jennifer Ray is too humble to let you know that she actually serves on a committee that helps other organizations throughout the country set up federally funded programs through the Department of Justice to engage men and boys in the prevention of violence against women and girls. We're credible, we're excellent, you can invest in us, and we really do hope that you will recognize the time and energy that has gone into vetting those of us who have applied. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McNally, are there any other hands up?
Mayor Pensurga, no, that was it. That was the last one.
And that closes public audience. Before we adjourn, I want to thank everyone who put this together. Thank you to staff, Ms. Lejeune, Mr. Scott, Mr. Durgan, for presenting this information and making sure that our commission is educated and they're able to make an intelligent and deliberate decision as we move forward. But I also want to thank all those in the audience today, every single person who spoke, represented their organization and what they do and how they help the community. If you've been around me, you know that I like to say, I have my sayings, and I like to say that government can't do everything, but that's why we need good partners to carry out our mission. So thank you again. I look forward to working with all of you. At this time, I'd like to open the floor for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
And
Second.
Second, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the ayes have it. This meeting is adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.